Good morning and a warm welcome to our Fastlane webinar today with the headline Intelligent Automation Made Easy with T-Systems and PegaSystems. My name is Petra Schütz from Divya and I will guide you through the session today. Now let me welcome our three wonderful speakers of today. So we have Raja from T-Systems with us, we have Mithun from T-Systems and our guest Peter from PegaSystems. I'm very happy to have you here today. But since you know yourself the best, I would ask you to say a few words about yourself and what are you here for today yourself. So maybe we start with our guest, Peter. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. It's awesome. I'm the director of the AI lab at PegaSystems. And I work with major brands to help them understand how they can become more efficient and effective through the use of AI and also get closer to their customers. And it's great to be here. Mithun?
Thanks, Peter. Yes. So I'm Mithun Prashanpati. I'm an enterprise architect here in T-Systems International. It's been close to a year with T-Systems, and I work with clients in all their hyper-automation efforts. I'm looking forward to talking to you all. What to you, Raj?
Hey, hi everyone. Good morning. I'm Rajshekar Buddha. I'm lead system architect in T-Systems International. I work closely with clients in their implementing digital transformation programs with our Pega technology. And very nice to be here.
Thank you very much for the short introduction. I'm very curious about the topic of today. And yeah, let's start directly. Mithun, I think you prepared the first part. So the stage is yours. Go for it.
Thank you, Petra. Yes. So it's been a pleasure for us to, from T-Systems International as well as from Pega, to provide you an insight on hyperautomation. What is hyperautomation? To define first, since the dawn of enterprises adopting computing, automation has always been an agenda. Tough times like COVID pandemic situation has also drawn and thrown light on the significance of automation. Most of the automation till now is focused more on the optimization of the process and digitization. With advancements in technology, a new trend kicks in, and it is called hyperautomation. And in short, hyperautomation is about making use of AI in different forms to simplify business processes and thereby leading the way for digitization. A transformation exercise where a traditional company stares up to be a digital company. And right now, hyperautomation is prior one in most of the organizations because a digital-first world requires robust IT and remarkable effort on business process optimization, and that's the core focus of hyperautomation. Yeah, so the hunger for automation. The biggest why we are really running in a pace for hyperautomation. To provide great employee experience. That is actually the biggest part that is being solved by hyperautomation. As the global analyst predicts, there is a ton of opportunity out there, and the global market is supposed to reach around 200 to 500 billion in revenue. The technology itself is actually pretty mature at this point in time, and but the opportunity is still ripe. So that actually puts us in a win-win situation, both from the clients as well as from technology partners like us. Hyperautomation also leads to faster realization of business outcomes, and agility is one really big part of the puzzle. And you can also actually reach out to us and also read about hyperautomation initiatives and more on how we at T-Systems look forward to hyperautomation and how it turbocharges success in here. So Petra will share the link with you. And to discuss about the challenges of hyperautomation, I hand over to Raj. Over to you, Raj.
Thank you, Mithun. Let's have a deep dive on typical challenges in hyperautomation ecosystem. Implementing multiple automation programs is the foundation of hyperautomation, meaning that it is a complex system by definition. Many organizations like the concept of hyperautomation, but would park their initiative for future due to fear of failure. The fear can be due to resilience problem, budget, or lack of understanding. There are infinite possibilities of hyperautomation. The vastness of IBPM, NLP, ML, AI may sound like a positive feature, but when you are new to hyperautomation, it can be hard to differentiate the effective uses from not so effective ones. Once all the possibilities start to arise, organizations can feel overwhelming and it is hard to choose the right fit. Choosing the right infrastructure. With an overgrowing number of new infrastructure options in the market, it can be hard to choose the best option for your application, and it is often requires a mix of several different solutions. Time and cost to set up. Hyperautomation is a promising word, but implementing new applications, systems, or processes require time and cost to research and set up and testing the systems that were implemented properly. Lack of business process understanding, which complicates and slows down hyperautomation implementation. Lack of skills in-house, searching for and training people with proper skill set and expertise for hyperautomation implementation and development is one of the most frequently encountered challenges. Now that we have seen the challenges, let us see an approach to adopt hyperautomation. It takes a lot more than technology to establish a true hyperautomation initiative. People, strategy, and execution. These are the three foundations of successful hyperautomation initiative. To have the best results, organizations need right people, the right strategy with the right execution plan. Each of these items are very important and each item relies on each other for success. Insight-driven. An insight-driven organization embeds analysis, data, and reasoning into decision-making process. Analytics projects often start small, but becoming an insight-driven organization means figuring out how to scale these projects across the organizations to drive greater business impact. Business process simplification. Merriam-Webster defines simple as readily understood or performed. Therefore, when it comes to business process simplification, the goal is to minimize activities and tasks while being efficient, effective, and productive, and also delivering value to the customer. Now comes to digital orchestration. The more complex an IT system is, the more complex managing all the moving parts that can become. The need to combine multiple automated tasks and their configurations across the group of systems or machines increases. That's where the orchestration can help. Hyperautomation platform suite. This allows companies to be able to make use of dynamic platform that is designed to meet their complex needs and also help them to make data-driven decisions. This is how the digital orchestration and hyperautomation go hand in hand. And let's see the resulting benefits are. Risk-adjusted hyperautomation setup brings together all the disparate technologies within the enterprise and helps harness the total power of integrated automation. Deep analysis of processes with data-based process assessment. Non-destructive is complementary to the existing automation technologies within the customer environment. Seamless customer journey. Unlike the specific technologies that solves one automation problem, hyperautomation enables an integrated and seamless hyper-automated customer journey. This is throughout the process and across different systems. Most importantly, improve employee experience by providing better work-life tools, which in turn makes work fun. Let us see how hyperautomation enables digital transformation. Organizations struggle with digitalization due to accumulated legacy systems, complex business models, lack of cumulative vision, organization silos. To maintain the competitive edge among the competitors, organizations must embrace the change. Hyperautomation can streamline the business processes and integrated legacy applications with modern solutions at ease. By establishing a hyperautomation ecosystem, companies can not only reduce costs and workload, but also provide fast and personalized and empathetic customer service. With this, I hand over the session to Midun.
Thank you, Raj. It was really insightful. To demonstrate hyperautomation on a telecom landscape, I take the BSS side of it. A typical BSS side of telecom would actually comprise of a CRM solution coupled with a cloud billing orchestrator and few other systems like a procurement system, inventory system, and even an external ticketing system if needed. So just by looking at it, we can say that almost all systems are connected, given that telecom already follows an open API approach, which is recommended by TMF. So you can almost say as always that systems are pretty much connected. Does that really mean that there is still a scope for hyperautomation? The short answer is yes, because just because all the systems are connected, it doesn't mean that we drive up efficiency. In order for efficiency to be high and also provide the real experience that is required by our customers as well as the employees who work on it, we need systems that are business process optimized. Take an example of an email that is arriving in the CRM system. What if the employee who is working on a specific case have to classify the email that is actually coming in and then route it to the right personnel who can then work on this case? The whole problem actually occurs here, because a thing which can be done by a machine intelligence is actually given to human intelligence, which means we are lacking or decreasing productivity here. In order to mitigate this gap, what we will do or what we can do is to introduce artificial intelligence or other technologies that has artificial intelligence inbuilt, like natural language processing, to support the agent in working on the case. So we classify the email that is coming in, right, by understanding the context of the email, and then route it to the right personnel who can then work on it directly. This leads to a massive hike in productivity. And as Raj was mentioning before, also lead to great work-life experience. So in order to enable our customers, we at T-Systems International has come up with an innovation lab. This environment, which is really made for our customers, works this way in 3 phases. At first, we ideate a requirement together with our customer, then we design it, and then we will create a prototype in this environment, and which can be showcased to the customer, also to take feedback from them, and then we can also follow up further on that. And how is this really different from the lab environments in other firms? We here at T-Systems International has not created this lab environment on a specific technology. Rather, it's actually a cumulative installation of different platforms that has been configured to communicate with each other. Say, for instance, a case management platform, a content management platform, authentication service, several data services, and even a portal system built by T-Systems International that helps us to test mashups from Pega in other environments. So I love analogies, making analogies, and when I thought about hyperautomation, I could not really find anything better than comparing it to the art of origami. A few years ago, my son came to me to craft him a bird that he was watching on television. I immediately jumped in. And after all, how hard could that be? On delving into the details, I was able to understand that it's not going to be that easy. It is the same case with hyperautomation. You need a strong partner who can support you in this effort and then direct you to avoid all the pitfalls that can happen during this transformation. You can have a lot of traps during this whole revolution, and to steer clear of all these traps, you need a good partner. We at T-Systems International has a close relationship with PegaSystems in the way they deliver hyperautomation as a platform suite and also include AI all the way. We are at awe with all Pega does with AI, especially in terms of AI transparency. And in order to explain the hyperautomation initiative that is, that can be achieved through PegaSystems platform, I invite Peter. Thank you, Peter, and over to you.
Thanks, Mithun. It's great to be here, and I really loved your metaphor of origami here. Also, another metaphor popped into my mind. When you were talking about, hey, it's great if you have an entire landscape with systems with APIs. You still need an orchestrator, right? So I was thinking almost like a symphony orchestra. You could have tons of great musicians, but you still need a director that would orchestrate the entire orchestra. So the same goes for application landscapes, of course. All right, so let me delve deeper. Let me take a little bit of a deep dive. I'd like to continue on this whole discussion on why you would want, why you need hyperautomation in the first place, just to connect it also to the story of Mithun and Raj, and then I'll go a little bit deeper into what can it really consist of, right? So I'll talk about capabilities and potentially also where and how you could use it. I'll go fairly quick, so just jump on the bandwagon here and enjoy the ride. So, but let's start with this question of continue on this question of why do we need hyperautomation? Because for us, hyperautomation is not an end. It's not a goal. It's a means to an end. And one way to look at this is to look at a slightly bigger picture at the entire environment that you need to operate in. Of course, what we're seeing is there's a lot of change economically, maybe pending recessions, employment, both shortages as well as people losing their jobs, but geopolitical or electricity prices, supply chains. And so there is a lot of change, and these changes become less and less predictable, and they are coming faster and faster at us, right? So, and how do companies organize for this? You can see that they are already transforming. They're looking at how can we get closer to our customers? How can we provide not just products, but can we provide more services and do that in a seamless journey? But there's also, of course, this continuous pressure to have an intense focus on efficiency, margins, effectiveness. And you're constantly being asked to move faster and faster. So ultimately, it's maybe a little bit of a cliche, but change is the only constant here. And there's no finish line. These changes will come at you faster and faster and quicker. So you need to be in a situation where you can be very agile. Yeah. So and that's a good use of hyperautomation by providing that agility layer across your application landscape, where you can build all kinds of journeys and where you can innovate quickly and you can close the gaps that your customers are experiencing. So how does this really work? Yeah. So one way to think about it is in terms of how can we, Mithun and Raj already spoke about hyperautomation as a whole, and also the role of AI and intelligence. And I'm Pega's director of the AI lab, so I have a little bit of an AI angle here. But what AI allows you to do is to go beyond just process automation. There's benefits in automating processes, but you'll hit a certain boundary at some point, and that's when we need to make these processes smarter. So you go beyond automation into optimization. And also, there's an opportunity for these systems to learn, to become smarter over time. So it becomes actually a self-optimizing business. And a nice metaphor that we can use here is the idea of an autonomous business, autonomous enterprise. Almost, it's the metaphor of a self-driving car, where a self-driving car is always course correcting as well. Actually, as a business, you want to become as agile as a self-driving car and constantly adapt to the goals that you have as a company. Yeah, so that could be hyperautomation could be the means, and in that sense, the autonomous enterprise could be the goal or could be the end. And that's also where AI, of course, comes into play. And AI is not just artificial intelligence. We have there's different points of view on what it is. But one thing that's really important is to make it actionable. If the intelligence is not being used, not being put into a process or an interaction, it will have no impact. Of course, it's also really important that it's trusted. So we make responsible use of AI, bias-free, transparent, so that it's accepted both by your employees, by your partners, and ultimately also by your end customers. And this way, the AI can become always on. It can be something that will power everything, all the process interactions where you're inserting hyperautomation. Now, and to come back to this metaphor of the self-driving car in the autonomous enterprise, where hyperautomation could help. A self-driving car as well. You want to go somewhere, you have multiple objectives. You want to go somewhere, you want to maybe have the shortest route to get there quickly, but you also want to make sure that this happens safely. And maybe you are one of the people who is a car person who kind of enjoys how to drive the car. Oh, sorry, I was flipping back. So there's different goals that you want to optimize here, and at the same time you need to balance those goals. You're getting somewhere quick versus safety, for example, and there's tons of rules and policies that you also need to take into account. And so the self-driving car is just constantly making decisions every millisecond, what kind of actions to take, to push the pedal or to push the brake. And likewise, in autonomous enterprise, you will have your organizational goals, and anywhere in your process or your interactions, you could make these smart decisions on what to do next. So you need a good combination in hyperautomation of what we call the muscle and the brain. The muscle will give you the opportunity to automate your processes, but the brain will actually insert that intelligence to make all these millions of decisions daily and all these processes that are happening. Yeah, so in a bit more detail, the idea could be is what you need in hyperautomation is the brain to make those smart decisions on what to do next, and then you need the muscle to execute the action through all these lovely terms like business process management, robotics, case management, interfacing to different channels, and in the back end talking to the back end systems. But we can also use the muscle to measure the outcome. Did we take if we route certain work to a particular agent? Did we make the right decision? Is that agent indeed able to resolve that particular issue within the SLA, so that this can be fed back to the brain to learn? Now, and what kind of capabilities could come into play here then? A good metaphor here is maybe sense, decide, and act. Yeah, so it's the same thinking when you would study like a human or animal. How we make sense of our environment and we try to interpret it all. And then we make decisions on what to do, and we take the action and we learn. Same for your Tesla self-driving car, and same for the autonomous enterprise. So I'll give you some example of these sensing capabilities, these deciding capabilities, and then ultimately that will feed into acting. Yeah. So let me just walk through some of these capabilities just to put some flesh on the bone here. Now, first, sensing. One form of sensing is to have more the macro level overview. Yeah, so to really see where, how is work flowing through your organizations? Where can we find bottlenecks? Is there a lot of rework happening? So maybe we can prevent that from happening. Are there some maverick users who are taking a short path, which is actually not compliant? So those type of questions are questions, let's say in the sensing part, because we make sense of where all the work's happening through technologies like process mining. This is a capability we recently acquired, and that actually we will be launching at the beginning of next year. But you can see here that based on listening to all kinds of events of work happening, we can actually reverse engineer the process from the events, and you can understand, where are the bottlenecks indeed, what are root causes, how can we actually fix the process. So this is useful both to onboard new processes. If you want to build new processes in hyperautomation, you can first see, how does workflow in my organization anyway, and then you can build it into an hyperautomation platform. But uniquely, what we are able to do is, as also a platform that executes those processes, is to apply that same idea of process mining also on top of the processes that run in Pega. So we can observe both what's happening outside Pega, new processes perhaps, but also what's happening in Pega. Now, and there's also other forms of sensing, and maybe we want to make sense of unstructured data, like text here. You can see we're extracting entities, we're understanding what is the meaning of this particular email, what type of issue is this customer having, for example. And so that's another form of sensing. But it could go further, and maybe we want to make predictions, maybe we want to listen to streaming data and detect patterns, and many different other examples of sensing as well. The next step is to translate all this data and all these interpretations that we've done into taking particular actions within one particular execution of a process, or one interaction that you have with a partner, or one interaction that you have with a customer, right? So, and that's really key, because otherwise AI becomes useless intelligence, and we want to make it actionable intelligence. Yeah, so being able to translate this insight into real-time decisions, and then taking the action and learning from it, is absolutely key. And you see just some examples of decisions here, but just to give you a feel, we could have a process like this. In this case, it's a particular claim. Yeah, it could be an insurance customer who files a claim, but it could also be maybe a car dealer, and it says like, a car comes in for repair. Is it covered on the warranty or something like that? Or can I do this repair for this amount? Just an example. And we're making smart decisions here in this process. For instance, should we approve this claim? Can we automatically do that, or do we need to route it to a particular human to look at this claim? Should we investigate it? Should we escalate it? Is this a complex claim, yes or no? And can we provide guidance through either to an agent, to an employee, or to a partner, or ultimately to a customer, to resolve this case, to resolve this process towards a successful outcome? Yeah, so these steps that you see at the bottom, they don't just apply to a claims process. They could apply to any process. Yeah, any process that you run, where you have a piece of work, probably there's an element of, can we deal with it automatically? Is this complex? Who to route it to? Should we escalate? Should we investigate? Those type of typical process decisions. You know? Now, and how can we actually make smart decisions then? Yeah, that's where we want to combine, like I said in the autonomous car example, and maybe business rules, strategies, policies, and those are the real constraints. Like for an autonomous car, it's like, what are the traffic rules? Yeah, or how do I balance for my driver, getting somewhere fast versus getting somewhere safe? But in a business, you also have similar objectives. Like in a claim scenario, you want to deal with the claims fast, but also you want to make sure you minimize any fraud or claims leakage or whatnot. Yeah, so it's a combination of business rules, strategies, and policies, as well as potentially machine learning and predictive analytics. So our clients use systems where they have hundreds and sometimes thousands of machine learning models that, for all the different actions you could take, predict, hey, what is the likelihood of a good outcome? Yeah, if I route this piece of work to Peter, will Peter resolve this piece of work within the SLA? Yeah, or what is the likelihood that this loan will actually be accepted, or that a particular claim is fraudulent, or whatever it is? Yeah, so machine learning can actually inform those decisions by predicting the likelihood of a successful outcome. Now, the final question is maybe what to use it for. So, like I said, ultimately, you want to build this into any process or any interaction, of course, you need to think about what are those processes that matter to me most. So which processes are repeatable, which processes have a high impact in terms of KPIs that we have, and which of those maybe journeys are spanning multiple systems. Those are good candidates to start to look at, like, can we apply hyperautomation here? Yeah. But more from this point of view of you know, the enterprise view, it is important to realize that true value comes, and this is back to Mithun's example again, true value comes if you are connecting capabilities across different applications, across different business functions, right? If you have that agile layer, that hyperautomation layer that can really orchestrate, like a director, all the different musicians in the orchestra, if you wish. And that's where the true benefits are coming. But you can start small, start with some key journeys, and then build it out, and you'll get more and more synergy across those journeys as well. More particular to the use of AI in these business processes, like I said, every process has a start and an end. Yeah, every workflow has a start and an end. So we can look at, you know, a piece of work comes in. Is it complex? What type of issue is it? Can we deal with it automatically? Should we, if not, should we route it to a human? If so, to whom? While we're working the case, you know, should we reprioritize this particular piece of work? Can we maybe predict while we're doing the work that certainly this becomes a case where we may not be able to solve it within the set time frame? Can we provide intelligent guidance? Can we predict the outcome of this piece of work? And so that we can become more proactive about resolving it. And so these are all examples that apply to any business process almost. Yeah. But to then make it a bit more specific to verticals, there could be all kinds of different vertical application points for intelligent automation in general, hyperautomation in general, and for AI specifically. If we look at financial services, we can make smart decisions when people apply for a loan and decide, yeah, can we give you the loan or at what rate? Yeah, or maybe we can use it to power regulatory applications like KYC and money laundering. Those are also complex processes, but we also have an intelligent decision on maybe detecting certain behavior that's maybe a little bit fishy. In communications and media companies, we can use it to retain customers, to detect who's likely to churn, maybe provide good omni-channel service, you know, second guess what is the reason for a call when people dial in, and then already play a message while people are waiting to be connected, like, you might be experiencing this issue, for example, but also to be clever about how you plan your network rollout. Yeah, so things we do for Google, for example. Or in manufacturing, yeah, so when you're onboarding new partners, when you're monitoring your vendors, you do supplier relationship management, risk management, maybe you have certain captive lending functions, which are very similar to then the banking use case that I just spoke about. And finally, this is not just limited to private organizations, also public organizations can make very good use of hyperautomation. And this is also where we have joint clients together with T-Systems, with the Bavarian government and other public organizations, where we're optimizing citizen service, very quickly are able to kind of ramp up new applications if there's certain big events happening like COVID, and not just provide kind of seamless processes, but also make sure that we make the right decisions, put the right intelligence into those processes. Yeah, so with that, I come to the end of my presentation here. Concluding, I think hyperautomation has a lot of potential. Yeah, so ultimately it can orchestrate all these different applications in your landscape in the back end, but then talk also omni-channel to all your different partners, employees, customers. So provide kind of a unified single experience that's powered both by the muscle for process automation, but also by the brain, by making sure that we're doing the right thing the right way. So with that, I would like to hand it back and we'll jump into a panel.
Thank you very much. So let us stop sharing the screen and let's all come back here now. So Raj and Mithun as well. So yeah, thank you for this great presentation to all of you. We learned a lot about hyperautomation in general and the approach to handling automation in public industry, for example. And we've seen how we can effectively infuse AI into our automation journey. So now we wanted to take a look into the future. So yeah, we wanted to see, to take a look at some insights on what lies ahead, what's cooking well, and where the industries will need to realign to avoid dead ends and project failures. So at this point, I would just ask you again if you have questions. I've seen a few questions coming in. We will answer them shortly after those questions I've prepared already. So if you have questions we haven't answered already, please feel free to use the your control panel to hand in the question so we can answer them in a few minutes. Right, but now let's take a look at disruptions first, whether resulting from a pandemic or geopolitical situations. They've been a cause of great concern. As we embark or restart the actual normal phase again, emerging technologies have a larger role to play in terms of finding newer ways to mitigate risk, whether it is supply chains or any other industry. The concern is pretty much common. So I have a question: how can embracing a digital-first strategy with hyper-automation help navigate complexities and the distribution ubiquity? Peter, maybe you want to go first with an answer, but the question is open to all of you.
No, absolutely, Petra. Yeah, I think that's a nice question. So it builds a little bit on also the introduction that I gave, where I say, well, sometimes people talk about hyper-automation as some cool new technology and things like that. But I think if we reframe it more in business terms, why do we need hyper-automation in the first place? It is, of course, what you're saying. You know, there's a lot of change, and if anything, you know, change is becoming even in the market, be it economical or political or COVID or whatever it is. And we need to move faster and faster and faster. And I think that's the role of that's where hyper-automation then can ultimately help. Yeah, and I think it is good to take in that sense also a little bit of an approach where you can change quickly, right? So rather than putting all kinds of intelligence into channel applications, that's not good, because then if you interact with a company through those different channels, then you'll get a disjointed experience. Or rather than putting all that logic into your existing backend applications, that won't be good either, because you know there could be multiple applications that play a role within a journey. So that's really kind of our kind of joint vision here, is to say, hey, we call it center out. I put like a central capability in place, hyper-automation capability in place, where you can very quickly build all kinds of journeys that have both elements of muscle and brain, and that can really then talk to the systems in the back end, and also talk to the channels in the front end, and that will give you that true speed IT, that will give you that agility to change really quick to changing circumstances.
Thank you. Mithun or Raj, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, absolutely, Petra. So I completely agree with Peter at first. Great insights, Peter. And I also want to emphasize what the COVID pandemic actually made us realize in terms of, you know, why hyperautomation is really on the foreground right now. So being digital first is not just just mandatory right now; it's priority. The reason being, if at all we have been actually the way, at least in a country like Germany, most of it actually is still most of the places are still, most of the authorities is actually still not rather digitized. You still actually have the paper forms being handed over, from counter to counter to actually get things done. So hardly this is the reality. And during pandemic, we actually at T-Systems actually had an initiative together with the state government where we were able to, provide subsidies to the small businesses, which we are actually waiting for, support from the government. So had it been not with Pega or a hyperautomation initiative like this, the government will not be able to actually support people the way that it could. So it's really of importance.
Great, thanks for those insights and examples as well. So if we jump over to the topic cross-industry applications of hyperautomation, we often hear that healthcare would benefit the most with hyperautomation industries. RPA in supply chain is often in talk in the technology world. Each of the industry application have common aspects which can be extrapolated to other industries as well. We'll look for those opportunities here. Which industries are going to reap the maximum benefits of hyperautomation, and what are cross-industry applications of the solutions? What can other industries learn from the cross-industry applications?
Yeah, I can take a first stab at this. I think that the industry applications, they always speak to the imagination, because it's easy to kind of visualize these problems. But the point I also made is, like, you can also think about it more generically. Like I said, like every process has a start and an end. So when you run any type of process, whether it's applying for that small business loan in a public sector example that Mithun was just referring to, or whether it's some other process, and we do need to figure out, like, a piece of work comes in. What is this? Can we identify what the problem is? Can we deal with it automatically? Who to route it to? Do we need to escalate? Do we need to investigate? So I think it is useful actually to put that general pattern on top of your problems, because all your processes, they are fairly unique, but they probably have all of those elements. But then you can look at your specific business and see, okay, what are the issues that matter to me most? So if I have a bit more of an AI angle to this, in insurance, there's tons of processes, but the key ones are claims and underwriting. Or in another industry, it might be providing excellent customer service. Or in a third industry, it could be like banking. How can we make sure that we know it's great that we sell product, but we also need to minimize risk? So I think it's also good to think really about what are my most core business processes that really have potential, the biggest potential for impact. I don't know, Mithun or Raj, maybe you want to chime in on this.
Raj, you're muted.
Yes, sorry for that. Yes, so you have given a very good example on the insurance side. Yes, in case of specialty insurance, underwriting is typically manual and time intensive. So there are other solutions which are implemented in healthcare, which were taken, meaning the small bits and pieces, the AI-based solutions, or the concepts that were implemented in healthcare were kind of utilized in insurance domain. So I know the industries are completely different. The piece of solutions that were offered in healthcare were solutions for insurance. So we can actually, those would be the kind of key benefits that we are seeing in hyper-automating solutions that we are crafting over the period. And we can utilize these solutions over in cross-industry. We can utilize the solutions from healthcare in insurance domain. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for your valuable answers. And one final question to you before we go over to the questions from the audience of today is, if we look at hyperautomation and AI and customer engagement, a topic of interest for most B2C environments and often talked about in B2B world as well. What changes will AI-driven automation bring to the customer experience in both B2B and B2C?
Yeah, so I think indeed, today we spoke a lot about hyperautomation, but a bit in the context of, let's say, process automation. Yeah, all kinds of workflows and processes that you have in your organization. But the key ones are, of course, those where you also interact with your customers or citizens. Yeah, so and that could be service related, and so and you know, hyperautomation and specifically AI can help here to let's say determine maybe, you know, what is the likely issue why someone is calling in, provide intelligent assistance to hints to the customer like how to resolve it, maybe even before speaking to an agent. After that, we can give that guidance to an agent as well, intelligent guidance. But you know, we can also use that to become more proactive about customer service, like detect issues before the customer contacts us. We can maybe already detect issues or maybe even become predictive about it. Yeah, so and likewise in marketing, the marketing part of customer engagement, that's all about how can we maximize customer experience and customer lifetime value. And so in all the channels that we're interacting with customers, not just these traditional marketing channels, but the mobile app or a call center or a shop, all the channels, how can we make relevant recommendations? And that would maximize both the value of the customer, but also the experience for the customer. How can we be relevant in every single customer contact?
Thanks. Mithun or Raj, something to add? All right. So I would recommend we go over to the questions from the audience, to the questions you handed in already. And there are a few questions. Let me pick the first one. When we implement AI, data privacy issue is also a major concern. How do we tackle that?
That was a really interesting question, Petra.
Sorry?
Yeah, who should take this question? I have an opinion about it, but maybe yeah, Raj, do you want to say something around privacy in the context of AI, and then I can continue, or I can kick it off?
Yeah, please kick it off, Peter. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so privacy, Datenschutz, etc. in German, but privacy is very, very important because we need to. Sometimes people talk about, you know, how do we deal with our customer data? Well, guess what? It's not your customer data. It's the data of your customer, right? So, and ultimately, we as customers, if I put my consumer hat on, we want to be treated fairly, and we want to make sure that companies use data in a privacy-friendly manner. But ultimately, what we want is that they use that data to our benefit. Yeah. So, or if they use our data, it's to our benefit, not just to the benefit of either the company or the government. Yeah. There should be something in it for us. And so there are hard boundaries around privacy, making sure that, of course, if people don't opt in, you cannot use their data for marketing purposes or whatever. But even within what's legally allowed, I think the much bigger, more important discussion is how do you win the trust of your customers, and that you're using data analytics to do the right thing for them, not just the right thing for you. And then you will see the attitude of customers flip. They will actually, rather than saying, well, why are you using my data for your own benefits? It will flip more towards like, hey, you know, I called you yesterday. Why do I need to explain my problem again? In other words, they kind of expect you to use their data, but in a good manner. Yeah. So, or why are you sending me all these stupid marketing messages that have nothing to do with my specific needs? Yeah. So, I have to put a more positive spin on it. If you then use it to kind of personalize towards the customer, to the benefit of the customer or citizen, then that attitude will flip, and people will actually expect from you that you will use data analytics to provide either a better experience or to improve processes. And the bigger play here is also around ethical use of AI. And so that's not just privacy, it's also about how can we make sure that the AI doesn't discriminate, fairness, bias, that it's transparent so that we can understand how decisions are being made, so that I can contest, for example, if I don't get a subsidy from a benefit from the government, or if I don't get a loan, that I can ask for an explanation. And so all those topics are really important, and they're also part for the EU people here in the audience of the EU AI Act, which is being negotiated right now, right? So, and that's yet another reason actually to centralize your hyperautomation into a platform. Yeah, if you have your logic and intelligence distributed in your channels or distributed in backend systems, how on earth are you going to be compliant? Yeah, so for that you really need to centralize that.
Just want to add one more point, Peter. So the more data that is generated and the more users have access, I think there would be high chances on data leakage into the hands of someone in dark web. Yeah. So data security and data storage issues have reached, I think, into global scale, as the data is generated from millions of users around the globe. Yeah. So that is why business maybe need to ensure that the best data management environment for sensitive data, especially, and training the algorithms for AI applications are being kind of used as of now. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me just add a question, which is about the training of AI. So the question is, how is the AI trained, for example, on NL in a mail to take a proper routing decision? How is training effort versus decision quality balanced typically in the real world application?
That's a great question, and I think that's I think it's also a great example why you need brain and muscle on a single platform. So the question here is around how can we use intelligence AI in the context of, let's say, an intelligent routing problem. A piece of work comes in and I need to assign it to the right person. Yeah, so let's say an insurance claim comes in, who's gonna, can we deal with it automatically, or do we need to send it to a particular person to have a look at the claim? Yeah, or I'm a public sector, I'm asking for a particular benefit, someone needs to decide on whether I can get that benefit, yes or no, automatically or human. How do I route it the right way? Now, how intelligence can help here, and it's very similar to that metaphor of the autonomous car, is that we need to balance multiple goals and also take real-world constraints into account. And AI could help in the machine learning part by predicting, for example, what is the likelihood that this case will be resolved in time? We can take into account what are the characteristics of either the teams or queues, or even down to the level of an agent to work on this, so we can predict, like, what level quality will the work be completed? Will it be completed on time? Is this a complex case, yes or no? And so all those predictions, they can feed into that, but you need to combine it with strict rules around regulations, around labor law, around skills. And so it's not just machine learning that can go into the mix. You need to combine it with those rules. And I'm saying that why it's very important to have brain and muscle on a single platform is that you also, like the person was alluding to, you need to be able to capture the feedback. Yeah, so if you're doing the actual routing, you can actually also measure automatically whether the work was resolved at the right time. Yeah, so that's the hard thing that data scientists are often struggling with, is that they don't have the data to build those models. Now, by having also the muscle of a platform that's doing the actual routing, that's measuring the actual outcome, that's measuring whether it was within SLA, you can track all that outcome data and feed it back to the system to learn. So that's why you need to have both brain and muscle together, not separate.
Yeah, I want to add a few points there to your question, Petra, especially making use of NLP. So in general, if you just train it without the right algorithm, AI is actually biased. And this is where I like Pega, for that matter, because it provides AI transparency. you can pick and choose the algorithm that you want to actually make yourself, despite the data that you already have. You also need to train, and you also need to choose the right algorithm which can actually give you the right results. And when a case come in, you also have to understand why a specific decision was actually made by this model. And with Pega, you're actually given that capability. So without really that transparency, we may actually even encounter legal issues. So there is a high possibility of discriminating against customer based on race, or the way he writes, and different other attributes. So it's always better to actually have a system that is much transparent in terms of the decision that it makes, so that we can actually put ourselves accountable for it as well. Because if you don't know what you built using the AI model, you're not supposed to be, or you're not capable of answering such questions.
Yeah, and you need capabilities to manage that, detect bias in those decisions before it happens, have the transparency with rules. I think ultimately, that's all. It's also part of culture. Yeah, so it's like, how is this ingrained in people's thinking? Do we make responsible use of technology? And I think this remark about culture applies to hyperautomation as a whole, or becoming an autonomous business as a whole. It's also a way of thinking. Yeah, so I think the cultural change. I think we spoke a lot about capability and strategy, but I think the cultural change is also an important piece of the puzzle of the overall solution to drive success with hyperautomation.
We had another question, which was about a cultural change. If I can just pick this question again. I know we are a bit running out of time, but if you have time, just stay with us. We will stay for another maybe 5 minutes to answer a few more questions, because they're very valuable for us as well. So let me just read the question. The questioner missed the challenge that many of the automation tools like RPA, AI, ML, and others are distributed in different IT units. Also, it might be in some business units. Is there a best practice how we can address this challenge? At the end, it's also a cultural change.
Yeah, so I'll continue that one, but I think it's also interesting to hear my colleagues here. So, like I said, so the capability strategy is one thing. We spoke about why do you want to do hyperautomation in the first place? Where do you start? Capability is another thing. I spoke a lot about brain and muscle, and a lot about the brain. But the other part, I think, to make it success is the cultural change. So if I can elaborate on that a little bit, one is to think in terms of not just how do we automate, but also how do we optimize. Yeah. But the other thing that's crucial is also this question of where to get started, but then also how to scale up. So I think there needs to be also an attitude of not just doing sticky tape technical solutions with little RPA bots here and there, but really have an approach where you think more fundamentally around, I spoke about this center out, about how can we provide seamless journeys across different applications, across channels. So that's much more of a strategic way of thinking as well. So I think specifically in the RPA world, we've seen a lot of tactical thinking, and you get some benefits, but then you can't scale up, and you're providing band-aid solutions or shadow IT solutions. And so I think it's good to, from a culture point of view, to get people to think in terms of, but how can we really have an agility layer, two-speed IT, or whatever you want to call it, but that sits at the heart of our architecture, as opposed to band-aids in the end. It sounds a bit like capability, but it's also a way of thinking. It's also a culture shift in a way.
Just to add on that, right? So like we discussed on the approach of hyperautomation that we described. So that's where we thought the people, strategy, and the execution comes first. So that's where so if we have a proper strategy and the right strategy, right people, and the right execution plan that we have, so that actually drives our show. So yes, I know there would be organizations, silos, as mentioned in the question. Yes, there are different departments involved, but when you bring people together, that would be our first step. So we would recommend every organization start with that, and then followed with the technical aspect of it. So like Peter was mentioning, the Pega center out approach actually brings business and IT together to look into a problem from all the variations, all the different directions. And that allows us in rapidly providing innovative solutions, which helps customer needs as well as the business needs. Yeah. So yeah, that would, I mean, we recommend our organizations to start with the business architecture. Yep. So yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for this great discussion. Thank you so much, Peter, Raj, and Mithun, for taking your time today to share your valuable knowledge, your opinions, your experiences with us. Thank you for asking your questions. I hope you enjoyed this webinar as much as I did, and hope to see you again at the next webinar of the series. We'll keep you informed, and until then, have a good time and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure, Petra. Thank you.